Well, I said it was going to be bizarre, and boy, was it. I'm Justin with NRN, and this is your Daytona 500 recap. The checkered flag has fallen, and the 60th running of the Daytona 500 is over, and it's been 20 years since Dale Earnhardt won the 500 in the number 3, and now the number 3 is back in victory lane. But let's go through the race and talk about how we got here. This was actually a very good race, and everything I predicted, none of it came true. There was some very good racing from the start of the race as soon as the green flag fell, and it didn't go single file for a right good while, and that was surprising to me because what I expected to see was kind of what we saw in the duels. Was when the green flag fell, I thought we'd see maybe 2 to 3 laps of racing as everyone tried to get a good position, but then the race would go single file and everyone would run nose to tail, just trying to survive to the end of the race to be there for the end. But there were lots of good battles for the lead amongst drivers like Alex Bowman, Joey Logano, Ricky Stenhouse, and Chase Elliott. All those guys fighting for everything right there early on. But Joe Gibbs did not get off to a very good start in 2018 with his drivers, and Kyle Busch would be the first major driver to start having problems in the race, and he struggled in stage 1, having 2 incidents alone in the stage. He blew a left rear tire early on that put him a lap down, and then a few laps later he spun in turn 3, which I think was the result of another tire issue. So right there before he even gets to stage 2, he would be 4 laps down. And then it didn't take long to have the first big crash of the race. It came at the end of the first stage as Kurt Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. were racing for that stage win. Stenhouse got loose and stacked up the field behind him, and it was a domino effect from there. But it would be the defending winner of the 500 from last year, Kurt Busch, who would pick up the stage win. So he would win stage 1. However, under that caution, Kurt Busch would miss his pit box, and that cost him the lead of the race. So pole sitter Alex Bowman would actually get stage 2 kicked off as the leader. But the drivers involved in that first crash were Eric Jones, William Byron, Jimmy Johnson, Martin Truex Jr., Daniel Suarez, Kyle Larson, and Ty Dillon were the 7 drivers involved in that first wreck. And you'll note that Eric Jones, Daniel Suarez, and Kyle Busch are all Joe Gibbs drivers, so by the end of the first stage, 3 of their 4 drivers on the team were having major problems, and 2 of them were out of the race. And you'll note that I said Jimmy Johnson would be involved in yet another crash. So Johnson crashed in every race this week. He brought 3 cars to Daytona, and he tore up all 3 cars. So this is a 500 Johnson would love to put behind him. Stage 2, though, got started with Ryan Blaney taking the lead immediately from Bowman, but instead of going nose to tail, like we were used to seeing in the clash in both of the duels, the field actually ran too wide for several laps. Alex Bowman and Ryan Blaney stayed right there at the front of the pack, running side by side for the opening laps of stage 2, but damn, stage 2 got crazy because towards the end of the stage, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, William Byron, and Danica Patrick would all crash right there at the front of the field. 2 of the favorites that I had picked to win the event would crash out. That would be Brad Keselowski, who I thought was going to win the race, and Chase Elliott, who was one of my picks as well. Both of them would crash, so some big names would end their hunt in the 500 very early on. And I was just surprised and actually shocked at the aggression that was being displayed early on in the race. And I mean, these guys were racing like it was for the overall win, and it was only stage 2. And I understand that the stages are important to win because of points and everything, but damn, I mean, it's too early to care about points. The only goal today should have been to win the 500 and to finish first. First you must finish. But Danica Patrick wouldn't be able to finish her last NASCAR race, so her racing career would come to an end in about the same fashion as it had begun, with a torn-up race car. Ryan Blaney would hold on to win the second stage for Team Penske, his first year driving that number 12 car. But yeah, I was just really surprised at the aggression that was being displayed throughout the first 2 stages. So stage 3 was more actually like I expected to see once that got underway. The field ran nose to tail for the majority of it, with Ryan Blaney leading the whole way. Not much going on, no one really mixing up, and that's kind of what I expected to see. By that point, they were like, okay, let's try to survive to get to the end. And I actually didn't think the drivers would care that much about winning the first 2 stages. I didn't. But apparently they did, though. They were going for them points. But Ryan Blaney would just be doing his thing and being awesome in that Penske number 12. Penske did have the first two positions locked up during the last round of the stops, though. Joey Logano would come in second, but he would get caught speeding. He'd go a lap down, but he would soon get that lap caught back up when William Byron would spin, bringing out the caution that would give Joey Logano the free pass. The race would restart with less than 10 laps to go, with Ryan Blaney still in the lead. But then business would pick up as Kurt Busch and Denny Hamlin started the challenge for the lead. But at the end, with 2 laps to go, 4 miles remaining just about, all hell breaks loose, and the leaders had a major crash that took out the majority of the top 10, including Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch, Ryan Newman, last year's NASCAR champion Martin Truex Jr., and the pole sitter Alex Bowman. Lots of contenders with crashed race cars with 2 laps to go. I think about 9 cars in total would be involved in that crash. But Denny Hamlin, who ran a miserable race, was overcoming adversity, and he led them to the green-white checker finish, but he actually wouldn't see the checkers. Eric Almirola would get the lead with 1 to go, but he actually wouldn't make it to the checkers either. Austin Dillon would spin Almirola, and Austin Dillon would hold on to win the 60th running of the Daytona 500. He would win his 2nd career race and become a Daytona 500 champion in his grandfather's car, Richard Childress. And it would be the first time in 20 years since the number 3 would go to victory lane at Daytona. And can you believe it? I still can't believe it. Who would have thought that Austin Dillon would win the Daytona 500 this year? I never expected to see him win the race. He wasn't even on my radar. But Ryan Blaney would lead a ton of laps until he was involved in that crash with Kurt Busch, but he would hold on, and he'd make it to a 7th place finish. His Penske teammate would have a rough race as well, but he was able to battle back for a 4th place finish. That would be Joey Logano. And Bubba Wallace Jr., who was piloting the Kings number 43 to a 2nd place finish. His first NASCAR race and his first Cup race at Daytona, and the boy finished 2nd. Absolutely amazing. Congratulations to Bubba Wallace Jr. Fantastic run. Look forward to seeing all he does this year. And Chris Buescher, who I have said many times on many shows, is a very underrated driver, and he would finish in the top 5 as well. Eric Almirola would see the white flag, but he wouldn't make it back to the checkered flag. But he put on a good face about it, and he was disappointed, but he said, it was racing for the biggest race of the year, so he wasn't too upset with the young Austin Dillon for pretty much crashing him in the final corner. But he still had a good run in his first race with Stewart-Haas Racing, so congratulations to Eric Almirola. I think this is actually going to be a very good year for him. But this race became one for the underdogs. It sure did, with many of the big names and favorites crashing out early. It really opened the door for some of the other guys to have a shot at it. And you know what? Like I said at the top, that actually was a pretty good race. I actually enjoyed that Daytona 500. But it was bizarre, man. Nothing that I had predicted happened, but that's kind of the fun of it. If I could predict all these, they wouldn't be fun, would they? I mean, that's the fun about racing. At the end of 500 miles, how did everything stack up? But still, just really surprised. Lots of aggressive driving throughout, and I just knew a Ford would win that race. I was so sure a Ford would win that race, but it turned out being a Chevy. So Austin Dillon gets the first win, first big point-paying win in the Camaro at Daytona. And the first Daytona race that the Camaro was in wins. So that's impressive right there. A good start for Chevy's new body style, the Camaro. And Austin Dillon wins the biggest race of his career, and the first win for RCR in a long while. It's been a while since they've been to victory lane. And I know it's early to talk points, but, with this win, Austin Dillon is set for the chase now. He's locked into the playoffs. So, at least one of your playoff contenders for the 2018 year, it'll be Austin Dillon. But how cool is it, by the way, seeing the number 3 in victory lane, and not just the number 3, but seeing the number 3 and the number 43 at the front of the field. 2 legendary cars, 2 legendary numbers, back at the top of the charts. How cool is that for a Daytona 500, am I right? But let's take a look at the top 20 finishers of the 60th running of the Daytona 500. Austin Dillon would pick up the win. Bubba Wallace Jr. would finish second. Denny Hamlin would be third. He started second. Joey Logano would finish fourth, and he'd be the highest running Team Penske car. Chris Buescher would have a strong run. He'd finish fifth. Paul Menard, making his first start for the Wood brothers, would finish sixth. Ryan Blaney, who led the most laps of the race, he'd wind up finishing seventh. Ryan Newman would be eighth. Michael McDowell with a really good run tonight. He would finish ninth. And the Dinger, AJ Allmendinger, would finish 10th. Eric Almirola, who was leading into turn 3 on the final lap, he'd finish 11th. Justin Marks would finish 12th. Trevor Bayne would finish 13th. David Gilliland would be 14th. Clint Boyer 15th. Jamie McMurray 16th. Alex Bowman, who started from the pole, he'd finish 17th. Defending NASCAR champion Martin Truex Jr. would finish 18th. Kyle Larson would be 19th. And Gray Galding would be 20th. That is your top 20 finishers for the 2018 Daytona 500. And next we'll be racing in Hotlanta from the Atlanta Motor Speedway. And I'll actually be in Atlanta to watch the race. So stay tuned to NRN for video and pictures from the event. You can follow NRN on Facebook. Just go to Facebook and look up NRN, the No Bull Racing Network, to join the page, like the page, and get good articles on everything that's going on in racing and conversation. You can also follow No Bull Racing on Instagram and Snapchat by looking up No Bull Racing Net. And that'll do it here tonight. What a 500. That was exciting. I really enjoyed the race. It was a good one, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Surprising finish, and I actually do like to see first-time Daytona 500 champions. Congratulations to Austin Dillon on winning the Daytona 500. I'm Justin with NRN, and I'll see you next week in Atlanta. Take it easy, everyone. Have a great week. Peace.